tinfoil?
No.
You want a tinfoil hat?
No. Hello there.
What's going on?
No,
guys?
I want one of those hats that like you put beer in that has straws going to your mouth.
Yeah.
But I want to put iced tea in it.
Yeah.
Oh, and that way I don't have to pick up my cup. That's how lazy.
Oh, that's good.
Coronavirus
Wow.
has made me.
Right. They're like, you 12-ounce curls. It's
just pick up this whole heavy glass of
wow.
iced tea.
Wow. All right.
I just want to like straw. It just goes.
Just a straw.
Yeah.
Those hats, you can find them all over the place. They don't just have them for beer.
I know. And maybe I'll make one. We have baseball helmets in the garage.
We have them out there.
And we probably have tubes somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to hold. What if I just put the big giant
maybe just
pitcher.
duct tape it to your head.
I'll just put a pitcher.
There you go.
On top of my head.
Yeah.
With straws.
Maybe.
Anyways.
How did we go from literally right before we started this thing, we were talking about presidential stuff, and now we're talking about wearing. I thought you were going with tinfoil hats.
No, we were talking presidential stuff. Then it went to you made a sloth face.
Oh, right.
Then it went to you fixing your hat. And then I was thirsty.
What's going on, guys?
So happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
Oh, hi, Kristen, Alice.
And Miss.
Oh, and Miss. I know I just
watching.
saw her name pop up. I didn't see.
Yeah.
They're listening together.
That's awesome.
Those are my sisters.
Yes, they are.
In case I was wondering. Pop quiz later.
But in case it's on the next survey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we started this whole lockdown thing, one of the things that I love these documentaries, right? So I've been thriving on them, but there's this new channel that we have now that's Gaia. It's on Amazon. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty cool. It's like basically everything you don't see in mainstream TV outlets. Really,
a lot of spiritual stuff. A lot of what's the word you used? Fringe science.
It's fringe science, but it's not fringe in the fact that it's far out there. It's just fringe in the fact that they don't teach us. They don't necessarily report the information because it doesn't necessarily fit to whatever their current teachings are. Right.
Yeah, but I mean, it's stuff like auras too. Like, I mean, it's all over the place. So, like, that's one of those like fringe sciences, right?
Right.
It's
like
auras and
and chakras and all that. And
Chris is really gonna dig this information today.
Right.
She likes facts.
Facts are fun. Facts are the reason why I started watching this show.
Yeah.
So I saw that I get those annoying Facebook ads as you go through, and I had the Gaia channel as a page I liked, but they'd always pop up with these TV shows, and every one of them seemed interesting. And this one stood out above all of them, and it's called Missing Links. And basically, it's the gaps that we're not taught, and it fills in the holes of the information we have versus the information that we're being told. So there's a lot of information that we have that they're not telling us about, whether it's science, history,
even
geology.
The history we learn is it's subjective to who's telling us about it. So.
Right. So the first episode they get into, they start talking about climate change, which we all know has been a topic it's been around. This isn't a new topic, but it's one that why the smirk already?
I'm just waiting for the passion to explode because the word climate change is we don't even say those words anymore in the house because it just sends you on a tangent.
Right. So, well, because it's politically motivating.
You said it so peacefully just now. That's what my internal thought was wow, that was the nicest.
The beauty of meditation. That's what that is right there. So
there's a lot of opinions on climate change too. And so look, there's people out there that are diehard, believe in climate change and making a difference and all that stuff.
Right.
He's not talking about that.
No.
We're going into the science of it.
Right.
So
well,
if you don't want to hear it,
even if you remember the last time we talked about this in the podcast, it was right after we had got done watching a documentary called Cowspiracy. And now mass agriculture has affected the CO2 emissions far beyond any production or coal manufacturing, any of that. So it shows the emissions from that point of view, right? Yeah. Which no one's saying that the emissions are not higher right now. That's not at all the thing. It's literally the fact that we live in cycles, and one of those cycles is global warming and cooling. That's part of the cycle. It goes hot, it goes cold, and there's trends that have occurred for, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of years. Like, it's not a new
Right.
occurrence. This didn't just happen in the 80s and all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my God,
It's all that Aquanet.
it's gonna get so hot. That was the
Yeah.
whole thing, right?
I remember that growing up with like aerosols was like the biggest deal.
Yeah.
Which, look, I'm not saying it's healthy for everything, but I
Right.
mean, to blame it in the last 20, 30 years is just,
Right. Well, they keep, and of
cockamamie.
course they change what they blame for the emissions, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, there is no doubt that things are different.
There's more
Right.
people,
There's
there's more
more-
pollution
right.
there. I mean, it is.
It
But
is different. However, these things occur and have always occurred. So how do we know that? Well, scientists are really smart people, and they figure out ways to determine how the Earth keeps record. Well, one of the ways it keeps record is coring and tree rings. And you can tell a lot of information from the three different types, right? So there's the underwater coring, which happens at the ocean floor. And they can drill hundreds of feet and dig up all this information. Well, there's sedimentary layers that can give you various information. You have ice drilling, which now they're down. How far did they say they were down? It's like 400 feet now at this point.
yeah, which I find fascinating. Like,
The-
I mean,
Might
I
even
think
be
like,
farther than that. If I
drilling in
remember
dirt
right.
is one thing. Like, and I think that that's part of like what we were taught, like with sedimentary layers of things.
Yeah.
But like the idea of like drilling into a glacier and it's like just so frozen and like almost like this weird permanence to it
Right.
that kind of blows my mind.
Right.
Watching that.
Yeah. So the ocean drilling is down 400 feet, and then the ice cap that they're doing in Antarctica is down miles. So it's actually like 2.2 miles down. It's pretty deep. So what they do is
Wow.
they just drill out this core of ice, and they did it in two different locations. One was at hold on, let me find it or learn how to pronounce it. Either one. The Vostok Lake, and then the EPCA, which is EIPCA. They were drilled at two different locations by two different groups of scientists at the same time. They were both working, and one was in the southeast corner. One was like kind of in the northwest central area of Antarctica.
Mhm.
And they drilled two different cores, and magically they got the same results. They ended up with the same information. Well, part of that is they dated their cores back at the same depth, 420,000 years.
Which is how
It's 420,000 years. So every layer of ice that they had on record, they registered as a year,
Mhm.
right? So they got 420,000 layers. And from those layers, you can tell the temperature, the CO2 levels at the time, any shifts in the environment. And then the temperature in both locations, if you go back and look at the chart, their time graph, they mirror each other. They're identical. I guess they'll mirror each
like
other.
in
They-
both of the
they
cores.
literally, yeah. So the record high temperatures and high temperatures in both locations were identical. And
Oh.
then they keep the same temperature, and then they drop down. And the cooling periods were the same length of time. And so they verify this in
it
two
wasn't
spots.
just local to that one little area. It was
It's the
a
entire
bigger
continent, right? And remember, there are two different groups of scientists that are going through this information. So it's
Mhm.
not one group that controls both spots.
right.
So two different groups
Which
of
makes it
scientists,
like more believable, right?
right?
Mhm.
So they both agreed that these things occurred at the same time. So when these cycles are happening, you're seeing all kinds of different shifts. Hi guys, all the people that just
Hi
joined.
everyone that's
Hi.
joined.
So then you have the underwater cores, right? So those date back 2,000 years, and they show similar cycles. And they're indicating currently that we're in a warming trend. We're in the middle to beginning of an uptick.
So they go through the different layers of dirt
Mm-hmm.
underwater, which
Right.
I guess, I mean, if you're having warming of the earth and this is a continual cycle,
Right.
if glaciers are melting and
Right.
Okay.
And it's impacting the entire Earth. So it's
Right.
not just one location, right? So it's everywhere
right.
equally. And then with those underwater cores, they actually, this one goes back 2,000 years that they did specifically. And between the years 820 and 1040 AD, or Common Era, which is a new thing that they're doing. I didn't know that.
we
I've
didn't know
never even
that.
heard that. So apparently now, if you don't know what it means, AD used to mean after death, which is from zero,
Biblical.
right? Zero to now. They're now calling that the Common Era. And then BC was before Christ, and now it's BCE, which actually means before Common Era.
Yeah, on the scientific side of things.
Right. So I had no idea. That's a new term I'd never heard of.
Yeah, me too.
So
I just learned that too.
So anyway, between 820 and 1040 AD, there was a period they call the MWP, the medieval warming period, and that was 1200 years ago.
Yeah,
exactly 1200 years ago.
It's crazy.
The temperatures were 4 times higher than they are today on average. So
wait a second. They couldn't be 4 times higher than, like, if our highest here in Vegas is say 120 this year.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't
Not
be
same
480
no.
degrees. Oh, okay.
No,
just like it's 4 times higher than what it is. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
Just clarifying.
No. 420 degrees.
I was like, no wonder humans died at one point.
Right. So then there's the tree rings, and these tree rings kind of tell a similar story to the underwater cores, right? So they're telling you the CO2 levels, they're telling you the temperatures, and that's all based on the information they can find within the ring itself. So when they cut those trees down, you know, so many rings means so many years.
It's amazing.
And within those things, they can tell the temperature, they can tell the carbon, all that.
Like what the environment was.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So in the tree rings and the underwater core timelines match identically. So the temperatures for the last 2,000 years for the underwater core drilling and the tree rings
match
the same. Yeah. You could see the difference one of them trails off like 10 years later, but when you're talking about a 2,000 year period, to be able to identify the cooling trends and warming trends, like, it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
When you look at the big picture. So anyway, these CO2 levels and all that, and temperatures, they fall and rise together. However, we are taught today that the CO2 levels cause the change in temperature. That's not true at all. Actually, science has shown time and time again that the temperature actually rises first, followed by the CO2 levels.
I think that was like the one thing that really stood out to me when we were watching it was that part.
Right.
Is that they do coincide.
They do. 100%. And they have for 420,000 years. You can go back and look. They rise and fall together.
And then the spike in the CO2 levels.
Right. So
after the spike.
So it's going to get hot, and then the CO2 levels will follow behind it.
Yeah. They kind of like go together, but that CO2 level's just right behind the temperature as it's rising. Yeah,
right.
It was crazy.
So there's a quote from the Nature Journal, which was published back as volume 399, published in 1987. And the quote is this: when going from interglacial to glacial conditions, the change in CO2 concentration actually lags the change in air temperature. So it literally just follows it. So the CO2 level will rise after the temperature.
As it's getting hotter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So once the temperature peaks and the trends start to fall, so do the CO2 levels.
Right.
So they'll eventually start to fall. And then it gets really cold. And that was one thing that so it's the cold afterwards that's more of a problem than it is the uptick in the heat. The heat maxes out. Like, it usually, you can kind of tell that it gets to a certain point and then that's it. And then it dips. But the dips is where
that's what scares me.
The variations come in. Right.
Well, and that's what they were saying is, and we don't talk about that at all. It's all about global warming.
Right.
And maybe in our lifetime, that's what it's going to be about, is that things get warmer. But when that peaks and falls and it starts to get colder, that's going to affect farmers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's going to affect so many, like, just plants and trees and produce, and that like isn't being talked about, obviously, because we're not there now. But
once the temperatures start to drop back down, it'll be harder to produce food, and that's where the conversation gets interesting. With that is, I want to say 75% of the world's food, or 80% of the world's food, comes from north of the equator,
Right.
but the most land mass is north of the equator. Most humans are north of the equator, but all of the freezing will start at the North Pole and come down.
Awesome.
Right. So you'll see it trend down. And that's where the problem comes in when the cooling happens. But we're not cooling
And I don't
right now.
think that will happen in our lifetime.
It will not happen in our lifetime. And I'd be shocked if humans, as we know them today, still exist in that fashion, in the same fashion. By the time the cooling period comes around. I mean, you're talking about could possibly be 2,000 years, like for the warming part. Like the graphs that you see with these things, you got to understand they date back 800,000 years. Like it's not a small graph. So when you see one little slice of that chart,
right, and it's going
it's
up,
actually indicating maybe a 2 to 10,000 year window. Like it's
right.
Yes,
it's just, I mean, based on past, this is normal.
Right.
So like even with the medieval warming period 1,200 years ago, like it took a little while for things to cool back down,
right,
and then for us to go back up. I mean,
you're talking about a 1,200 year period.
Yeah.
Between the last one. And then there was another spike a little bit later in like 1480. But it was only half of the medieval warming period. So these things happen. They go up and down. And that one, these smaller trends happen to be within a 1,200 year window.
Yeah.
But big picture, they happen over tens of thousands of years.
I have so many like smart ass comments in my head about global warming stuff that, and I'm refraining.
Right.
I am. So if like random smirks, it's just me talking crap in my head.
Or you're totally judging.
No.
Not
you.
Yeah.
I was thinking Greta, like how does she explain the medieval warming period?
Right.
And so
stop global cooling. That's right. Hey, maybe that's how we make our money. We'll just go get some bumper stickers made. Global cooling and start a new trend.
Like the opposite.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to take over all of our livestock.
So we've already established that these things are occurring, right? So there's these cycles, all right? But there's other variables to this. So the Earth's rotational impact, right? So if you go to Alaska or anywhere in northern Canada and you talk to the Inuit people, they will tell you that the Earth has changed locations in space. These are not scientific people. These are people that live off the land. They don't have access to our information. And they will tell you Earth has changed locations in space. Okay, well, how do they know that? The stars.
Right.
You stare at the stars long enough over a long period of time, you can see what's changed and how it's changed. Okay, so there was a scientist in Austria, Milanovic, who in 1958, last publications concluded basically that there were 3 cycles to the Earth. Okay, in the Earth, there's a precession cycle, and I totally was supposed to get a prop for this to help you guys visualize it, and I totally screwed that up.
I forgot. You want me to go grab one?
But anyway, so imagine Earth, right? Okay. So the precession is the wobbling on the Earth's axis. So we all know it spins, right? Rotates.
Right.
1 rotation's a day.
Why do you say I'm
just saying. maybe they don't teach that in Common Core Science. I don't know. Maybe. Just saying. Anyway, so it actually rotates in a circular manner. So the end of it's actually like that, right? But that rotation changes every 26,000 years, which is why when the Mayans said the world was ending in 2012, that was the end of the 26,000 year cycle. This is the precession cycle. That's exactly what that means. So it will rotate and get to its maximum point on this side, its maximum point on that side in a 26,000 year cycle.
Right? And so the Mayans thought that when that...
Well, they didn't necessarily think that it ended, but to them, life it's reborn.
Right.
So at the end of the 26,000 years, it's a new cycle. It's a whole new start of life. It's their beginning and end.
Right.
Right. Okay, so that's one. Then there's the tilt or the obliquity, which is literally the Earth tilting from 24.5 degrees to 21 degrees.
Right.
As it's doing this rotation, right? So it's wobbling around this point, but its tilt
changes.
Okay. It bounces back between those 2 points every 41,000 years.
Okay. So you have
Okay.
one thing happening.
Right. So your
There's like
rotations have
3
this way,
things.
the tilt, right?
Mhm.
And then the other part of this that is it's crazy to me. I mean, I've kind of always known this to be true, but I guess until you actually visually see it, the eccentricity, which is on a 413,000 year cycle. All right. So what this does, most of your science projects when you were in school, your Earth rotated around the sun like this. But now they've proven that our rotation is like this, but that thing goes like this.
You're talking about the
It
orbit
flexes our orbit.
around the sun.
Right.
So it's not as ovally. It
It's
actually, that orbit changes and
Yeah.
adjusts.
So it's so what happens is based on where we are in line with the sun and where Jupiter and Saturn are in our atmosphere or our universe
Mhm.
depends on how far our Earth is from it at any given point. And to complete that whole cycle is 413,000 years. So let's say we're between the sun's here, Earth is here, Jupiter's here, right?
Mhm.
If they're lined up,
It's a different
Jupiter,
pole.
yeah, Jupiter has a different pull. The sun has a different pull. But once we get out here away from Jupiter, now we're going to get pulled closer into the sun.
Got
right?
it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So
Which
those things.
that's how I feel like I've always, like, common sense wise, was more like the tilt of the Earth and the different way the axis is and this and that, like, has to play a part in the temperature.
Right. So, and that's all part of it. Yeah.
Of the
So
world.
but that's on a 420 or 413,000 year cycle. So that doesn't happen as often, right?
Mhm.
That changes a little bit longer. But then you have the 2 other cycles, which are 26,000 year cycles and 41,000 year cycles. And now you have 3, what they look like a lie detector test, some little squibbly lines. You
Yeah.
see the one that just keeps going like this, but it's pretty steady. So there's 3 versions of that, right? There's one
Mhm.
for each. There's one for the precession, one for the tilt, one for the eccentricity. Okay.
Yep.
Now, if any 2 of those happen to land on the same spot of max, like when they're at their full potential of whatever that is, when they both, if they
So
both
like the
line
degree
up,
of tilt or
degree of tilt
okay.
or the rotation or the pulling of the, like your gravity, depending on where you're at.
Eccentricity.
Right.
Mhm.
If 2 of the 3 of those max out at the same time, you're going to see a warming trend
because of where
everything's
how
located.
we lay according to the sun, the pole. Okay.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense.
Right. Right. So as long as 2 or
science.
3 of those are lining up,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to get warm. Well, guess what? We're in one right now. We're literally in the middle of 2 of them. The obliquity and the precession are both at their max current, like today. That's it. So this has happened only 13 times in the last million years that these things line up to give us our max temperature, the absolute max.
Yeah.
It's 13 times over the last million years.
So that means it's going to get pretty hot then.
It's going to get hot.
Like probably hotter than
but it's a natural occurrence.
medieval warming period.
That happens. Yeah. But it happens in cycles. And these cycles will overlap each other and they're constantly changing.
Right.
And we currently just happen to be right in the middle of it. All right. So there's that. We're in the middle of that one, which they say that these things, when they happen, other things happen. You'll see trends in other things. Right.
Okay.
Right. So because of all these different variations of our Earth changing and our distance from the sun, there are other cycles that are affected by it. One of them being the economic cycles. This isn't just money. This is economic as far as our resources, our medicine, our information. Like there are ebbs and flows that happen in a cycle.
Right.
Right. In the early 20th century, a Russian economist named, oh man, I'm going to butcher this one too, Kondratiev, was the first to recognize the cycles as they related to global and local economies. Right. So he determined that these cycles have been occurring before and they're still occurring now. Right. All right. Well, this dude died in 1928. His little chart that he started was in 1914 and it goes until 2030.
Okay.
Okay. So he's got 4 seasons, what he considers seasons, right? There's summer, autumn, winter, and spring. And these seasons
But they're not like traditionally the seasons of a year.
No,
That's
no,
just
no.
what he calls.
That's how
these
he
seasons.
describes them.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a section of time within that 66-year period that he considers an economic cycle. The first one being summer lasts from 1966 to 1980, known as the runaway inflation. Interest rates soar, debt builds, capital goods overbuild, stock markets make no progress. The Dow Jones in 1966 was at 968.
Okay.
The Dow Jones in 1980, 838. Didn't go anywhere. Went down a
Not
little
much.
bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Didn't change a lot. Okay. Then you get into autumn. Autumn is from 1980 to 2000, known as the disinflation.
1980 to 2000.
Yep.
Okay. Disinflation.
Yep. Inflation goes down, interest rates fall, commodities drop. So, for example, the commodities, the gold in 1980 was priced out at $850 an ounce, and gold in 2000 was $250 an ounce. So it dropped $600 an ounce in this time period. Debt rises, stocks peak, followed by a crash. Dow Jones Industrial Average in 1980 was 838. Dow Jones Industrial Average in 2000 was 10,750.
That's huge.
Right.
800. Wait, 800 and what?
Yeah. 838 to
8
10,750.
So that was good.
Right.
Even though other stuff didn't sound good
Right.
during that period. I was just thinking the entire time, like that's basically my whole childhood was during that season.
Right. Well, the weird part about it is, as accurate as that information is, this was written before the guy died in 1928.
And it is accurate because, I mean, even if you think about the summer one where it was talking about the interest rates, or I mean, some of the highest interest rates on houses were end of the 70s.
Back in that time period between the 70s and 80s, you could put money in your bank and earn money.
Yeah.
Where that's not real right now. Now
really.
they take it from you.
Right.
But yeah, so there's that, right?
Even like that next period of the 2000s, like.
All right, so then he moves to winter, which is the third season from 2000 to 2015, which is deflation.
2015, which market crashed.
Prices fall, consumer confidence drops, banking crisis, high unemployment.
Yeah. Oh, that happened.
Gold boom.
That happened.
Yep, gold in 2000 was $250. In 2015 was selling for $2,000 an ounce.
Yeah. Do you remember all of those commercials? Like there were a couple years where it was like that was the thing to do, was just sell gold. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there were like buy gold places at like all the casinos here. You just go in for the day and take all your gold.
Right.
Or just buy it from you.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. So again.
But yeah, I mean, all that happened. The banking crisis, that happened. I mean, that happened during that time.
Right. Okay. Then we move on to spring of 2015 to 2030. This is the start of inflation.
Okay.
So we're right in the heart of this thing, right?
Yeah.
We're in 2020 now.
5 years into it.
Right.
Okay.
So employment and confidence increases steadily.
Yep.
That's what's been happening until we had this little incident.
Yeah. It's a little weird right now.
Inflation increases. That's real. Stocks rise from low levels. Dow Jones in 2015 was at 10,000. And in 2030, it's projected to be 50,000.
10,050. Based on that, guys.
Yeah, in 10 years, he's saying it's going to reach 50,000.
So this little hiccup we have right now, we're going to pass this.
We're going to go way past it. Yep.
Up, and better. But that means inflation too. I mean, right?
Right. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. But I mean, again,
that's kind of crazy.
It's kind of weird.
There's a lot of it that is accurate.
Right.
If he wrote that before he died in 1928, I mean, it does line up pretty good.
Right.
It really does.
So just for reference to show you how, so in, let's see, 66 would have been the spring. So the spring of this cycle, from 1949 to 1966, the Dow Jones rose from 181 to 1949 up to 968. So this is before the calendar started.
So the beginning of this cycle that you were just talking about, it shows that it did do this already once.
It's already done it once.
Where it's going to be 50,000 in 2030, you're saying that there was a substantial growth in 1949.
Right. Right. So that's the same growth that we see in our current situation.
Yeah.
So but that's back historically.
Yeah.
Right. So either way, it's crazy if you think about it like
we make
this.
it to 2030.
Right. All right. So then there's the other side of this. There's the third part of these cycles, which is human conflict. And I know that first thing when I heard this, I was like, there's no way that you're telling me that science can predict
crazy people.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
War, outbreaks. How are you going to tell me that? Well, it's not necessarily that they're going to predict it down to the date and these are the specific events that are going to occur. It's just that something is going to occur that is typically not beneficial to humans.
Yeah.
That's the way they look at it. So the conflict cycle refers to human behavior and conflicts and how they happen on a 17.71 year cycle. Super specific.
So 17 and change.
17 and 3/4 years. This cycle happens, right? Our current 17-year calendar dates back to 1875. Since that the wave chart started, there's 10 peaks of human conflict since 1875. Started with the Civil War, which is the first peak on the chart.
Okay, wait, but you're saying like
it
just peaks with conflict and then no conflict and then conflict every 17-ish years.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So from one peak to the next peak
with you.
Yeah.
Like 5 days ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Right.
Go figure. I remember bits and pieces of it, but I don't remember it all.
Right.
I have to visualize
this is the one that it's got that red chart that goes like this, and it points to the peaks and valleys of the certain events that occurred.
Yeah.
Right. So the first event on that chart was the Civil War. The next peak on that chart is the Spanish-American War. The next peak, Panic in 1907. Right?
I don't even know what that is. I'll have to Google it later. Okay.
Next. Then when you go down to the valleys of the chart, right after the Panic of 1907, when the first valley that they show, World War I ended. Next valley, World War II ended. Then the Korean War, then the Vietnam War. And it shows.
So it's like Vietnam War would have been up and then it ends
at the end,
and it goes down into a valley.
Right. And it's these cycles. It's weird how, they're within months of accuracy. Like they're just spot on.
Just crazy.
Right. And so they're showing how these things occur and how you could predict it, basically. Not necessarily what the event is, but you can predict that something catastrophic will be happening.
Some type of tension or conflict.
So just to give you an idea how crazy accurate this thing is. So this little thing we're watching was from 2017.
Yeah.
The chart was released in 14.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing tells you that in the peak of 2020, there will be another event. It's the 2020 is smack dab in the middle of another peak. Well, look at what we're dealing with right now. Another conflict. This is what they consider human conflict. There's
a lot of these things, like even though the show is 2017, like there's a lot of these cycles that are right around now, whether it's the global, like the warming. Yeah, it's a lot of crazy stuff and some good stuff with the other economic cycle. But
right. So then the next peak's gonna be 2032. So what you're gonna see between now and then, in basically about 6 years, you'll see the bottom of this valley, right? So in theory, whatever we're dealing with from between now and then will be done. And that'll be the beginning of the new uptick leading up to what is going to be the apex of that in 2032.
So it's kind of like with this pandemic thing, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but like if there was additional conflict with China or something else because of COVID, then that's something that would kind of continue for the tensions or whatever. And we still have tensions in Iran just bombed.
Yeah. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, they hit another one of our bases. There's
still tension.
Right. And there's still the chance of an all out war, not to mention the fact that
not that we want it. That's not what we're saying.
No. It's not that at all. It's just it
based on these things.
Historically speaking, these things happen. And now it's kind of one of those things that not saying it's precise to the day. Like you're not gonna know.
It's like it
but-
builds though.
right.
Like, historically, you can see it building, and I mean, there's enough hate and things in the world that, I mean, it could happen anytime.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, and that's the thing that's weird about it is it's not like these charts aren't made to fit an agenda, right? They're just made to give facts, and the facts are saying that you can predict when we might face some struggles.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Mhm.
it's not saying that.
And you don't have to. I mean, it's not like anyone's going to be like, "Oh shoot, it didn't fit the chart," but
Right.
historically,
But
it's
historically
just maybe even being
speaking,
prepared
right,
for it.
Right. So one of the things that's really crazy about it that I find fascinating is that the conflict chart and solar flare cycles
Yeah.
match. The solar
is weird.
yeah. So the scientists have figured out how to determine when the sun will produce a solar flare cycle that will affect our magnetic field that surrounds Earth. And they've got it timed now. And these charts, they show, and then they put the human conflict chart with it, and they match up.
Yeah.
Like they are identical. This isn't.
Which it makes sense because a lot of the things that we talk, like what we believe in, like the energy of people and the science on that, which is a whole different topic. Why wouldn't that affect us? Right. We talk about EMPs and like, doomsday prepping and whatever. Like it could wipe out so much if it's a big enough solar flare.
Mhm.
So these other solar flares that aren't that big to wipe out all of our electrical stuff, why wouldn't it make things? I mean, we joke about, and some people joke, some don't. I mean, it's kind of serious to me, but the like Mercury retrograde and like just some of those pulls and the energy that's beyond what we see and feel right here.
Right.
How does that not affect us? Right. So it, to me, like seeing the solar flares and like that magnetic pull and what it does do to Earth.
Right.
Yeah. It makes sense to me that people maybe react to it.
Yeah. It's a trip.
Subconsciously. I mean, you don't know that, right? So.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not like, and that's the thing. It's not like we have an antenna.
Hashtag ban solar flares.
Ban solar, yeah, no doubt.
Because of global cooling.
Right. With the solar flares themselves, they're affecting more than just the human conflict side of it. And this is a whole nother side of science that they get into a little bit later in further along episodes, but there is a correlation to the Earth's the magnetic field, and how that magnetic field affects our individual magnetic fields, because we all have them. They're measurable, up to 5 to 8 feet around your body. You have a field of energy, and those things both relate to each other. You can directly. It's. I mean,
insane. Even our different fields can impact each other.
I
mean, in general, and that's the same thing with like, I guess if somebody was near microwaves a lot more, like their field may be affected differently too.
Right. And so now there's science that proves that we are interconnected on a molecular level with nature.
Right. And I think that's been a thing that's been talked about, but that's why this Gaia TV channel is kind of interesting, because it talks about things that maybe we've heard, but they take it kind of a little bit to a different level of like scientifically showing you things. And like we've talked about with science before, is what's great about science is it's very factual to now and the information we know now. Obviously, these are things that if other information came in, it could change. But based on the information right now, the cycles, and it's just too coincidental to be not something.
Right. It's definitely something that they've got to put more scientific proof into, but they've shown how positive and negative energy, and I mean emotional, like if I'm sad, I emit an energy that has a negative connotation, and it will actually shrink the DNA not associated to me.
Right.
again, that's a super deep separate
Yeah.
thing.
You just have to like watch.
But
Missing Link, the show,
yeah,
has so many different
right,
episodes that kind of build on each other in a way.
right,
And
100%.
Like just being able to watch it. I mean, it's just really recommended to anyone that just kind of has an open mind and wants to like put eyeballs
Right.
on these numbers and
Right.
these graphs and stuff. Like it's really fascinating
Right.
to see a whole different point of view on it.
Right. So how this all ties into these cycles is, to get back to it, the cycles themselves happen and they have an effect. We already know that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you follow the cycles, so let's see, we currently are in a 24, right? So this is what they're calling cycle 24, where our time period. And we are currently starting to see an uptick in flares, which means it'll be at the height of the event, which means there will be some sort of catastrophic event, whatever it might be. So going back to solar cycle 23, at its peak was 9/11.
Right.
Right. Okay. So then you go back to the previous peak of these solar flares. You have the Iraq-Kuwait war. So these peaks coincide with the same as these other cycles.
So those are the solar peaks.
Right.
Which got it.
Right.
Okay.
So the environment creates conditions which, such as EMPs from solar flares that can impact Earth's magnetic field, and which impacts us as civilization, which was kind of what we were going into with that whole thing. We don't realize how much we're affected by all of these things that we don't even know are occurring.
Right.
Right. So you have the solar thing going on, you have the Earth rotating and tilting, and it's got all these different versions of it. Right. You have the gravity pulls, which is making your location to the sun change.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many things that we don't even realize that are happening just naturally, that just occur.
Yeah.
You know, and we fall victim to some of this stuff where it's, well, the news said because I drove this car today, the world will end in 2045. And that year keeps changing. That's the problem. Is so then when this started in the 70s or 80s, they're like, oh, we won't make it to 2000. We're going to blow up.
Yeah, I remember it being in the 80s.
Yeah.
Growing up.
Right. And then,
well, there was a hole in the ozone layer that was like going to kill us all.
It's going to suck the Earth right out.
And it was all because of the big hair in the 80s. Like that's what I remember.
Right.
And jelly shoes. I don't know.
Right. Well, that's why this thing was super interesting to me, because we are in the middle of something that will not happen again for a very, very long time. We are at the peak of all three of the major categories: the climate, economy, conflict. If you combine all three of the major categories and all of the little subcategories of each one of those things we just went over and lay them all on one big one, they all show
sound effects
that we're on the top. You like that?
Yeah.
They all show that we're at the peak.
You know, on the flip side, though, with the economy stuff, even though it's at a peak, it's at a little bit more of a positive peak where there could be some really good investment opportunities right now and different things, especially if the market's going to go up to 50,000. So the DJI by 2030. Right. So
yeah, I mean, you're saying that basically from what they're saying economically with the cycle, it will double over the next 10 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a little bit like it's a positive peak in that aspect.
And
it's just being prepared for the next season of economic.
It's the downturn.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the downturn with the economy. That's the issue. It's the downturn in the temperature.
Oh, and then
that's the issue.
Conflict will come back again.
Right.
So, dang.
Right.
So we just got to figure out what we're going to do in like 2032 to like hide
Well, we got to get through this one first. The year's not over and we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That's the part that's really interesting about it too, is this was all done before.
Well, if you didn't have anxiety before this, then
no doubt. So so most of the information from these guys that they put out, a lot of it was in the early 1900s, some into the late 1900s, but science as we know it is only about 150 years old.
Yeah. That's what I constantly question, right? Like, how do they know these things? But the ice cores, and when they talk about the different coring, and we watch Curse of Oak Island, and they do a lot of drilling and the cores that they pull out, and being able to see the different layers of things, that makes it a lot more real for me, because I'm not that I'm a skeptic. I really want to understand it. I ask why a lot. I'm like the toddler that doesn't stop saying why. So that's what the show just gives so much of that information.
Well, even on the Curse of Oak Island in the most recent season, they took a core sample out of the swamp area.
Yeah.
That guy could pinpoint the date within a 20-year window.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And it just so happened to match up with other sciences that have been on the island.
Yeah.
And it's the same technology that they're using. It's just on a broader scale when they're drilling down.
And they're like in the they're talking like 1700s, which is still, I mean, it's a little while ago, but not in the scale of where you're saying 40,000 years or
400,000.
Yeah. 400.
And so that's one of the things that with the core sampling, they're showing evidence of the climate change within a 400,000 year period. But what's really interesting about that is they later get into the fact that civilization, humans have been around for 400,000 years.
That's
which is a whole other thing that I really want to get into because they're that's a whole nother topic of conversation, but there is science that shows now what they faced. So they can look at the temperatures from the ice layers and determine what those people that they discovered were going through. They literally can tell you
CO2
what the
levels and
they can literally tell you what was going on.
The fact that there's higher CO2 levels thousands and thousands of years ago before
humans even
cars
existed.
And everything else,
before humans existed.
It's just interesting, what else is happening that's causing those changes.
Right. But that's a whole nother level of the coring thing. Cause that's a lot of how they found some evidence to prove that we have been here way longer than our standard books tell us. Like it goes back. Our standards now are like 4, 5, 6,000 years. Some of them 7, and that's 5, a really 000. Long time.
Right. Oh, they were dating. What was it? It was like different cultures, different like I don't know, communities of people that were dating back even twice as far back as they thought. Like 7,000 years.
Right. Yeah. They even have the dates wrong for what we understand Egypt to be and the Mayans.
Right.
And that whole thing coming out of South, that's a whole different ballgame. That's just another slippery slope.
Well, and that's all new. There's a lot of new coming out of South America.
There's a lot coming out of South America right now because they didn't realize that every mountaintop they saw was actually a temple. Yeah. It was not a mountaintop.
Like giant communities of people.
Yeah, millions.
That are gone.
They're saying possibly millions of people
that just vanished, gone.
Right. So. And they're the ones that predicted the end of the world in 2012.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one.
Right, I don't know. So anyway, that's a whole different ball of wax. So, and it's something we'll definitely get into because it's really. They found I'm just gonna drop this bomb. They found a microchip 300 feet down in a drill, like they were drilling out for a well.
Yeah, and there was like a piece of rock that was like coal-like.
They pulled out a rock that has a microchip in it. Yes, like a modern day computer microchip
that they think is
300,000 years old.
It's so weird.
Okay, first
we might have just totally lost people with that one.
Yeah, no doubt.
It definitely raises the question.
But it at least makes you stop and think. Like
it's aliens,
right? But anyway, so these 3 cycles, this whole thing, it only proves that we need more information on what is actually happening. Because part of the problem right now is we have 97% of scientists agree that the Earth is warming or whatever they say.
But who are they being paid by?
Okay, but 97% of scientists probably are saying that. Right. But all they're saying is it's in a cycle and we're warming. They're not really saying warming. That it's that
But it's the
they're
reason
twisting
behind
it. Right. They're twisting it to believe that we are the cause.
Or that we're going to be able to do anything about it significantly in our lifetime. Like if it's cycle, like it's just going to happen. Could we make some other changes? Like, I'm not saying like we shouldn't recycle and do stuff like that. I'm not saying that. But can we really, really affect change?
Enough
to change a cycle?
Actually, yes, you can. And this is yes, there is technology. There's technology on Earth today that can make every human being self-sustaining But who does that benefit if they do that?
No. But I'm not. But even if we were to do that, and we were totally self-sustaining,
Yeah.
How does that affect the cycle that naturally occurs?
Nothing. It won't.
That's what I'm saying.
It won't have any
doesn't,
effect on the
even
natural
if
cycle.
we did all of these things, how much of an effect will that have on just the natural cycle that it's going to warm up because of the way the earth is, the tilt in the
No, it won't have any effect on that. But
that.
it would remove money from pocketbooks, and that's all it really boils down to. That's
maybe we wouldn't have as much smog and stuff, which is
right. And that's half the reason this isn't getting done. Because there is technology right now that people do not have to live on a grid or on a water well system. They can each human in any location on Earth can be self-sustaining. There will be no more third world countries. That technology exists today, but it does not benefit people who make money like oil industries or transportation industries or governments.
Right.
Pharmaceuticals, all that goes away if the technology is released. So why would they tell us?
I know. I agree with you.
So, but that neither here nor there. The cycles are still going to happen.
Right. And that's kind of my point. Is you get these these Gretas that go on the cover of something and speak out. And it's like, it's just mind boggling to me.
Right. It is. It's crazy. But I mean, that's part of the reason that people need to be educated on this thing. They need it. There's more information than you're being told. And I say that all the time, but that's really the truth in it. Like if you don't go look for the information, you won't find it.
The aliens always do it.
The aliens, of course the aliens did it. That's the only reason we're here. But that's, there's just too much. I don't know. There's too much information out there that we are just too lazy to find. Luckily, this channel, I'm not exactly the most motivated person right now, but
it's really hard to be motivated to do anything right now.
But this guy presents you the facts. He gives you locations. You can go find it. So I went and looked at a couple of them to make sure the guy wasn't just some really smooth talker like Obama was and just say whatever he needed. And people believed him. I thought maybe he was a scientist. Silver tongue,
right? Like the scientist Bill Nye,
he's not a scientist at all, right?
Yeah.
So I went and looked at a couple of the things that he was talking about, like just to see, like, is this easy to get to? Can an average guy find this information, or is it because he's a scientist he has special access?
Don't cut yourself short. You're not average.
So then I went and looked at a couple of these things, and it's really easy to find information. We just choose to follow whatever they put on and whatever they give us.
That's a lot of people. Well, because there's so much information out there, it's hard to dissect like what's real, what's not. And we're just overloaded in general. So why add more to the plate? Like I think for a lot of people, it's just easier to just take it at face value and that's it. No. Or people that want to just believe one thing without looking into it, which is crazy. I mean, look, full disclosure, I was one of those people, probably 8-9 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, but I just I never even knew or thought to dig a little deeper or research or find different information in different locations. Right. I just didn't, but now
welcome to the dark side.
My brain hurts and
welcome to the side of.
It's not even that. It's, I think you hear that saying, like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Right. But I don't believe that. I think that I don't have a full commitment in anything because I'm constantly learning and evolving and growing.
Right.
Right. So it's not that I don't fully believe in one thing. And I have not one thing in my life that I can think of that I have enough passion and conviction in that I would just go out and protest and, throw myself out there. Right. There's just not. And it's not because I don't believe in anything. It's just that things and information is constantly changing.
Right.
And there's so much more to things than we know.
Right. Well, as soon as you stop allowing yourself to learn, you stop growing as an individual.
Right.
If you know everything, you're done. That's it. That's your max potential.
Yeah. And there's so many sides to things too. Like all the different things I'm thinking of right now. Like, would I throw myself out there 100% for this, or that. And it's like, no, because there's different situations or different, I don't know, just different sides to things.
You know, my problem is I have an opinion 100% all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm wrong a lot of the time because of that. But I'm willing to change my opinion.
No, you are.
Like
You're very passionate about some things. You really are.
Until my mind is changed.
But that doesn't mean that you're not willing to listen to other points of view.
Right. 100%.
Because you're not. And we've had some things where we do not agree and we don't see eye to eye on certain things.
I'm glad those didn't get recorded.
We've still been able to have conversations about it and then sometimes just agree to disagree.
Right. But that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's why this is so much fun, because this is just, it's not, these are not opinions.
Right.
That they present. These are facts and there's evidence.
And graphs with colored
and
bars.
Graphs and like little candlestick bars. Like.
And rolling bars.
Yeah. And there's no opinion.
Right.
The guy literally is like, here is a plate of information.
And there may be something out there that has a different side of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But this information definitely opened up like a whole other can of like, whoa, there's way more than we're being told
without
on
a doubt.
The surface.
Right.
So just dig a little deeper.
So it's one of those, I don't know, that for me, this conversation is never going to stop. And I've said before, even when we did the last time, my opinion on this is constantly evolving. And it's not.
Except for you just don't believe in climate change.
I don't believe in it from
the way that
the political aspect of it. And what they tell you and what they say is garbage. It is nonsense.
Anytime somebody's trying to shove something down your throat, as that's the way and that's what you have to believe.
You have to believe
you probably shouldn't believe it.
Right.
That's what I've come to learn in my 8 years
of
wisdom.
How
long have I known you? I started.
I have no idea.
I started that before you, though.
But that's.
But you definitely brought a whole different opinion to things to the table. Yeah. And me to you as well. So.
Right. Well, at least I fixed one.
You've swayed me in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of solved that problem a little bit. I don't know. Okay, maybe sometimes.
No, I would say
I'm
pretty open-minded.
Yeah. Well,
I'm very judgy too, but I'm really open-minded too.
Right. Yeah. So
I'm kind of judgy.
Yeah. If y'all have any further comments or questions on it, just feel free to comment on here.
Yeah.
And I will do my best to get you answers to some of them. I don't know what you're doing Friday.
I don't either. Well, and I wanted to talk to you. We should ask them. What's today? April 15th. So the documentary that I talked about last Friday, Innocence Files, comes out today on Netflix. So I want to look into that and watch it.
Yep.
I don't know how long it is. I haven't looked at it, and maybe do a follow-up based on that information. Or my other thought.
Oh boy.
was we're not that far from the extraterrestrial highway. And we've never been. So like part of me was like, if we felt up to it and getting out of the house, like maybe we could do a drive and a picnic with Area 51.
If we're going up there, we got to camp.
Yeah, but if we camp.
Yeah.
Where can we camp? I don't know. We'd have to look into
Just park on the side of the road.
Do you know anyone?
Worst case, we get shot. What?
I don't know. No, I don't.
No, I don't know.
Or we get abducted.
I don't know anyone that's been up there. I mean, outside of the tinfoil hat guys.
And the gift shop's not open, so we can't get like alien jerky and stuff. So it would really just be going up there to like say like we went to extraterrestrial highway and like take a picture with the sign.
No, but you got to stay overnight so you can see the UFOs.
I know. I'm down. I would love to go camping. I just don't know if it's allowed right now.
Who cares?
We would just park on the side of the road.
Yeah, we're social distancing. There ain't nobody out there. And if an alien comes within 6 feet.
They're gonna get fined.
He's gonna get COVID, and he'll take it back to his species, and everyone will be pissed.
I thought you liked the aliens.
I wouldn't mean to do it.
So I don't know. I haven't decided yet. The part of me like goes down one road, and then I'm like, oh, that's a little heavy, and then the other one's like, we did the survey on Monday. I'm just a little lazy. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, we'll have it figured out.
Yeah. Just stay tuned. It's a surprise.
Yeah, right.
That's it. I don't really.
No. Okay.
No.
All right. Well, then we'll see you Friday with a surprise thing.
Yeah, or maybe you can do a follow.
Oh, I guess I'll do it Friday. Of course.
Depends on how lazy I get.
Right. Who didn't see that coming? Anyways, thanks for coming. We appreciate it, and we'll see you Friday.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye, guys.